In this module, we're going to talk about financial mathematics. We're going to talk about loans and different ways of computing interest. We're going to talk about compound interest. We'll talk about annuities. Maybe you want to figure out how much you have to save each month if you want to have X dollars when you retire. So this is a very important module that we're looking at. And we're going to start off with the most simple computation in financial math, and that's called, appropriately, simple interest, and it relates to a loan. So let's start off and learn a few terms. When you obtain a loan, the initial loan amount is called the principal. The principal amount. And along with paying off that principal, there's a fee associated with having a loan. You're probably familiar with this word. The fee or the cost associated with that loan is called interest. So not only will you pay back the principal amount, the amount that you borrowed, you're going to pay interest as well, so that the bank or whoever it is that you borrowed the money from is going to make some profit off of it. Number 3. The amount that the lender charges for the use of the money, that should say loaned, expressed as a percentage of the principal. Percentage of the principal is called the interest rate. The higher the interest rate is, the more interest that you're going to pay for borrowing the principal amount. Number 4, before we formally come up with any formulas, let's see if intuitively we can figure out the question to some of these financial problems. Suppose you borrow some money. It's a simple interest loan, and you agree to pay the lender back using an 8% annual interest rate. Annual means each year. If you borrow $500 for 6 months, then how much interest would you expect to pay for this loan? Well, let's see. The interest rate is 8% annually, and that's for a whole year. But we're not borrowing it, or you're not borrowing it for a year. How long are you borrowing it for? 6 months. That number 6 is not going to come up in the computation. Because this is 8% per year, we need to put this, make sure they're in the same units. So I need this to be in years. So 6 months is 1/2 year. So let's see, 500% or $500 is the principal amount. If it were for a full year, I would pay 8% of $500 for interest if it were for one full year, but it's only for half of 1 year. So I'm going to pay half of 8% of, and remember the word of in mathematics usually means times $500. So you could look at this and say, without computing, turning this into 0.5 and turning this, well, maybe I will. Let's make them decimals. 0.08 times $500. Well, 0.5 times 0.08, half of 0.08 is 0.04 if you multiply it out, and that makes sense. If you're going to pay 8% for a year and you only borrow it for half of a year, it makes sense that you would only pay 4% for that half of the year. So let's see, 4% times $500. 4 times 5 is 20. Now let's see where the decimal place has to go. We've got 2 to the right, so we would have to be, let's see, actually we're right. It would be $20 exactly, 0.04 times 500. So how much would you expect to pay? $20. If you went the full year, 8% of $50 would be $40. So half of a year, you'd pay $20 in interest. Let's look at another one. And then in the next video, we'll write down the formula that makes it very easy to compute. Simple interest. Well, it's frequently used for short-term loans, and I don't think you're going to get many simple interest loans from the bank. It's usually probably from your mom or dad or from a relative that does one reason is it's just simple to compute the amount of interest. So, Bob borrows $1,000 from his dad, so that's the principal amount. At an interest rate of 10% per year, and he agrees to pay off the loan, including all of the accumulated interest, at the end of 2 years. In dollars, how much interest will Bob pay his dad at the end of 2 years? Well, if we made a little timeline, this is time 0 when he borrows it. This is the end of the first year and the end of the second year. Well, he borrows $1,000 at this time. So when 1 year passes, how much interest does he owe? Well, 10% per year means 10% of $1,000. At this point, he would owe $100. At the second year, he would owe, maybe I'll write that, $100 interest. I hope I said 100 before. The interest, 10% of 1,000, 1/10 of 1,000 is 100. He owes $100 interest for the first year and $100 interest for the second year. So the answer is $200. And obviously, if he kept it for 3 years, it would be $300, $100 every year, 10% of $1,000. In total, how much will Bob pay his dad at the end of the 2 years? This just means take the principal and interest together. So he borrowed $1,000. He's going to pay the $1,000 back, plus he owes $200 in interest, so it would simply be $1,000 plus 200, or a total of $1,200 at the end of 2 years. So he borrows $1,000, and 2 years later, he pays $1,200 back to pay off the loan plus the interest.